Hey there, Possum Rob here. Alright, so let me set the scene. It is the summer of 1989. Classic genre movies are lighting up movie screens like Tim Burton's Batman, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, UHF. Television science fiction is kind of slim pickings. Quantum Leap is just getting started, and a couple of attempts at making movies into series are giving it a go, like Alien Nation and War of the Worlds. And the juggernaut that is Star Trek The Next Generation is finishing up a second season that did a pretty darn good job of shutting the mouths of critics who foretold its doom after a first season that was, let's be honest here, pretty much garbage. With a couple of exceptions. It was in this time that a man walked into Paramount Studios with a fully fleshed out idea for their next science fiction series. He had a pilot script, a series bible, a plot outline, the works. It would take place not on a starship, but on a space station in neutral territory, built to be a center of commerce and diplomacy, next to a big swirly blue thing that would take you great distances. But there would be a dark and sinister force, an ancient race that would threaten everything, able to infiltrate the government and whisper in the ear of those who sought power over all, making it hard to know who you could trust. But a small but advanced and powerful ship would be made available, and the crew at a space station would use that ship to fight this enemy and inspire the other races and governments to unite against this force of darkness. But some races would ally themselves with that enemy, and in the end, the fate of the entire galaxy would hang in the balance. Unlike self-contained episodes, like was the standard at the time, this would be an arc, told over many seasons, many episodes, but one story. And the name of the show would be Star Trek Babylon 5. And Paramount said, nah, we're not interested. Try Warner Brothers. Hey! Now, before you hit send on that comment down there, this ain't going to be a show about did Deep Space Nine rip off Babylon 5. I mean, they did, but even B5 creator J. Michael Straczynski himself says he ain't interested in making that kind of accusation and believes that any kind of ruckus that could come out of such an accusation would only serve to hurt both shows. So he's content to let his series stand on its own. So that's what we're going to do here too. But I did want you to see just what this show was up against when it was just coming out, and what Straczynski, or JMS for short, even though that's the same number of syllables, and the rest of his team were able to do with a deck that was very much stacked against them is nothing short of amazing. Babylon 5 brought the overarching story into a science fiction television world whose bread and butter was self-contained episodes that anyone could watch without needing any kind of backstory, even if they only started watching the show like way late into the series, like after a few seasons had passed. And remember, this was the 90s. These were network seasons, so that meant 22 to 24 episodes a pop. To be sure, Babylon 5's first season did have a lot of standalone episodes, with the big story only being hinted at here and there, taking the spotlight in only a handful of episodes in Season 1 and somewhat more in Season 2. But by the time Season 3 starts, we're all in. You guys know me. I love Star Trek. I love Star Trek The Next Generation. I love Deep Space Nine. We're going to leave it right there for now, but believe me when I say, for me, Babylon 5 is one of the greatest science fiction series that has ever existed, hands down. So give me a chance. Let me take you through some of the reasons why I love this thing so much and see if you don't want to give it a shot yourself. Even if you tried before and you didn't get into it. I'm not going to lie, the first season could be pretty rough at times. Like we said before, even The Next Generation had a pretty rotten first year. But let me pull back the curtain a little and let you know what you're in for if you do want to give it a chance. All right? All right. So first, let me introduce you to some of the characters. The obvious first character is the station itself. It's called Babylon 5 because it's the fifth one that they built. Clever, right? Its purpose being a way to ensure peace by giving different factions a place to work out their differences peacefully. especially after the Earth-Minbari War, which ended 10 years before the show starts, and which Earth lost hard, but was saved at the last minute just before we were wiped out by the Minbari surrendering. And yeah, the reason they did that is huge for the story, so I ain't going to spoil that. But the station being a place for peace and cooperation is going to rub some of them angry people the wrong way. So the first 3 attempts at this thing were sabotaged and blown up. The 4th, though, was completed. Dodged the bullet. And then it up and disappears without a trace. Just vanishes. Yeah, there's a reason for that too. But Babylon 5 is completed, it doesn't vanish, and that's where this thing is set.
So I built a 3rd one. That burned down, fell over, then sank into the swamp. But the 4th one stayed up.
It's 5 miles long, it spins to create gravity, and it holds 250,000 humans and aliens. And at the start of the series, it's under the command of this guy, Commander Jeffrey Sinclair, played by Michael O'Hare. Sinclair is an Earth Force pilot who never saw himself in charge of a space station, but the Minbari, they didn't want nobody else in charge for some reason. So here he is. He was at the Battle of the Line, the final battle of the Earth-Minbari War where they surrendered just before they wiped us out. So why do they want him? Who knows? He's a good guy, trying not to screw up, but he'll get something stuck in his craw now and then if his principles are goofed with. Good commander. Second in command is Lieutenant Commander Susan Ivanova, played by Claudia Christian. Ivanova is also a pilot, but she joined Earth Force after the war, a war that claimed the life of her brother. Russian by heritage, very stoic, very pragmatic if bleak outlook, she's kind of hard to disappoint. But she does have a certain self-awareness about it. She's tough as nails, but as she gets to know you, she loosens up a good bit. Security Chief Michael Garibaldi, played by Jerry Doyle. Now this is my guy. He's from the neighborhood, and he comes from a long line of cops. He's a bit of a troublemaker, but he knew Commander Sinclair from back in the day and managed to impress the guy, so when Sinclair was given command of the station, he brought Uncle Mike with him. He's a real joker. Loves the Looney Tunes, and hey, who doesn't, right? But his struggle with alcoholism and his deep-seated trust issues can take him to some dark places at times. But deep down, he's a really good guy who's trying to do the right thing, even if he's got to bend a few rules here and there to get it done. Dr. Stephen Franklin is your chief medical officer. Played by Richard Biggs, Dr. Franklin is principled almost to a fault and a staunch pacifist. His father is an Earth Force general, nicknamed Old Firestorm. And Stephen, well, let's just say he don't see eye to eye with his pops. But his obsession with doing as much good as he possibly can comes with its own pitfalls, and Dr. Franklin can end up being his own worst enemy because of it. Now, in Season 2, due to some real-life and story-related reasons, command of the station passes to Captain John Sheridan. Played by Bruce I Fight for the Users Boxleitner, Sheridan is the former captain of the EAS Agamemnon. He was the only Earth Force captain to actually defeat a Minbari war cruiser. The only one. That's how outmatched we were in that war. And the fact that he's the guy that did it don't make the Minbari too thrilled when he shows up. Struggles a bit with transitioning from starship captain to military governor of a space station, but finds a way to fit in and ends up being one of my favorite characters in any TV show ever. Season 2 sees Michael Garibaldi get a buddy too, security officer Zach Allen. Played by Jeff Conaway, Zach's a good guy, tries to do the right thing. That's a theme around here. But his inability to always see the big picture means this sometimes gets him in trouble. But hey, he was Kaniki in Greece, so that's some bonus points right there. Later, we also get Marcus Cole. Played by Jason Carter, Marcus is a badass martial artist and a kind of covert operative, but with a really good sense of humor. He's a funny guy. I ain't going to talk too much about him, though, because his story has a lot to do with the big story, so we'll just leave it at that. So there's your humans. Now let's talk about some aliens. First, you got the Centauri. Now think about the Russian Empire before the Communist Revolution. Only instead of a revolution, the Centauri Republic is just kind of stagnating and declining, and its people are dreaming of the glorious old days.
There was a time when this whole quadrant belonged to us. What are we now? 12 worlds and 1,000 monuments to past glories. living off memories, stories. Selling trinkets. My God, man. We've become a tourist attraction. See the great Centauri Republic. Open 9 to 5. Earth time. Anything else?
Now that's Ambassador Londo Mollari right there. Played by Peter, you think you're going to wipe me right out, don't you, Jurassic? Londo's glad that his position as ambassador gives him some status in Centauri society, but he also knows this is pretty much it for his career. He wants nothing more than for his people to reclaim the glory of their past. But since that ain't going to happen, he just drinks, gambles, and chases women all the time, making him a real pain in the ass for his assistant, Veer Koto. Played by Stephen First, Veer is truly pure of heart, naive but optimistic. He wants to look up to Londo, but Londo don't make it easy for him. Eternally put upon but never complaining, Veer ain't your typical Centauri. One of the things that heralded this slow fade that the Centauri Republic is experiencing is that the Narn homeworld, which the Centauri conquered 100 years ago upon first meeting them, and exploited their world for resources and enslaved their technologically inferior people, they threw off the Centauri occupation 20 years before the start of the series, basically through attrition. The resistance movement on Narn who led the fight against their Centauri oppressors were called the Kari, a member of which serves as Narn's ambassador to Babylon 5, Jakar. Side note here, this is the first of many Star Trek alums that show up on Babylon 5. Trek fans will recognize Jakar as being played by the same guy who played Tomalak, the massively talented Andreas Katsulas. Jakar starts the series fiery and a little sleazy, wanting to do whatever he can to strengthen his people's position. And frankly, he ain't done fighting the Centauri. So any way he can antagonize them, he's all about that. But along with Londo, Jakar has one of the most impressive character arcs I've ever seen. And by the end of this series, his journey will have taken him farther than you would have thought possible. Jakar's assistant, Natoth, played at various times by two actors who did a lot of guest star appearances in Star Trek themselves, Julie Caitlin Brown and Mary Kay Adams, is fiercely loyal to Jakar and won't hesitate to drop you like a bad habit if you even insinuate that The Fugitive was overrated. The Minbari, the other side of the Earth-Minbari War. Highly advanced, the oldest of the races on Babylon 5, with one exception that we'll get to in a second. These guys are highly spiritual and frighteningly powerful. But they have their flaws. They can be arrogant, overconfident, and their warrior caste can be a little too eager to go crazy berserko if they get their feelings hurt. The ambassador to Babylon 5 from the Minbari, though, is a member of their religious caste, Delenn. Played by Mira Furlan, Delenn is magnanimous and serene and eager to learn about the humans, but Delenn is more than she seems. She's a member of the Minbari ruling body, the Grey Council. And remember that ancient dark enemy I talked about in the beginning? She's been worrying about those guys long before anybody else on the series even knows they exist. Her assistant is Lanier of the Third Fane of Chidomo. Yeah, here's a spoiler for you. You don't ever really find out what that means. Played by Bill Wishing You Into the Cornfield Mummy, Lanier is very naive and unassuming, fiercely devoted to Delenn, and a shockingly adept martial artist. Lanier's character goes in some interesting directions. He seems pretty bland at first, but don't let that fool you. The last of the major races is the Vorlons. These guys were exploring the universe while even the Minbari were still in caves. Vorlon Ambassador Kosh is aloof, cryptic if he speaks at all, and you really wonder why they're even bothering to participate in Babylon 5 at all. What do they care? Turns out there's a reason, but you gotta watch the show. Those are the major races, but you also have the Drazi, the Brakiri, the Game, the Pakmara, and lots more. Babylon 5 really outdoes itself when it comes to alien prosthetics and makeup. Honestly, I think they do a better job even than Star Trek. It's really outstanding. They even won a couple of Emmys for it. Okay, there's one more thing I gotta tell you about the B5 universe, and that's telepaths. All races have got some people who are telepaths. Well, all except the Narns. And yeah, there's a reason for that too. For the humans, though, there's an organization that regulates the telepaths called the Psi Corps. Telepaths are rated by their strength on the P scale. P1s are barely telepathic at all, and P10s are really powerful. But when a telepath gets out of line, who's going to go get them? Those would be the Psi Cops, and they're all P12s. So who do you call when one of those guys goes cuckoo? You know, I think you might be onto something there. But the Psi Corps is more than just a way to regulate telepaths, because telepaths run the Psi Corps. So it's like a union, a fraternity, and a cult all rolled into one. Now, people will employ commercial telepaths like Talia Winters here, played by Andrea Thompson, to sit in on business negotiations and trade agreements and whatnot to make sure everybody is telling the truth. And they do various other jobs too. To be a commercial telepath, you of course have to be a member of the Psi Corps. But there's something shady about the Corps, and it's usually got something to do with this guy here, Psi Cop Alfred Bester. Yeah, that's Chekhov. And I gotta say, when I think of Walter Koenig now, I think of Bester first and Chekhov second. He's a little rusty the first time you see him, but as the series goes on, he gets a real handle on his character, and you can tell he's loving playing this guy. And while we're on the subject of Star Trek alums, let's go through a few. Some of them may surprise you. You got Dwight Barclay Schultz in a really chilling episode. David Chancellor Gorkon Gulmadred and that dude from Star Trek V Warner in another interesting episode. Patricia Lots of People Tallman as Lita Alexander, who becomes a central character later in the series. Michael Commander Kang Ansara as a techno-mage. Just that word alone, techno-mage, made some of you sit up a little bit, I know. Theodore Worf's dad Bikel as Ivanova's old rabbi. Robin Lieutenant Savick Curtis. John Starfleet Regulations, that's outrageous. Shook as a Minbari I can't get into because of spoilers. Paul Captain Terrell and Dayton Winfield as old Firestorm Franklin we talked about before. And the First Lady of Star Trek herself, Majel Barrett Roddenberry, as the wife of the Centauri Emperor. Plus about 100 other people you'll see in the background of both shows because, hey, actors gotta act, right? A couple of other sci-fi big shots in here too, like Brad Dourif in one of my favorite episodes of the series. Michael York in A Real Heartbreaker. And is that Martin Sheen as a soul hunter? Why, yes it is. And Bryan Cranston shows up in a bit part too. Well, look at that. Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't concede a few points that are not exactly in Babylon 5's favor. The guest stars and performances in the first couple of seasons could be a bit not very good. There were some great ones too, to be sure. But there was a lot of this.
You said we.
My associate is watching over your body while I'm in here with you.
I got this. Leading people into battle. Sinclair. We can't just leave them. You think I want to?
We have to leave now, with or without you!
Yeah. Also, it took a little bit for the CGI visual effects to look good, and they never do manage not to look like CGI. But they were basically inventing this technology for use in sci-fi television, and in the end, it really does work with the visual style of the show. But you're going to see some rough stuff in that first season, so you got to be ready to let that slide. But if you can get past those little hiccups, you're in for an epic story of what looks like the struggle between good and evil, but is revealed to be something much bigger. With fantastic characters, phenomenal writing, 92 of the 110 episodes were written by JMS himself, and a few scattered in there by the likes of Peter David and Neil Gaiman. A score by Christopher Frank that is just top-notch, and a main cast that to this day really feels like they're my family or something. I cry at movies and TV shows. This is an inconvenient truth when it happens out in public. Return of the King, I'm a basket case by the end of it. But nothing comes even close to the Babylon 5 series finale, Sleeping in Light. I am weeping before the first line is spoken, and the less said about my mental and emotional state during the end credits, the better. I will not watch that episode with anybody else in a room. Ever. Ever. And I want you guys to have that experience too. So take some advice from your possum here. Check out this amazing Saturn and back-to-back Hugo Award-winning series. They say there's a reboot on the horizon. JMS is really optimistic. So take this opportunity to get the full background on this show before that comes out, and you too can complain about how the new one ain't the old one. Because, come on, it's inevitable. Alright, this has been Possum Rob watching stuff with you. Come back later and we'll watch more stuff. You'll love it. Thanks for indulging me on this little tour of something near and dear to my heart. Hopefully you loved it and you'll check out the show. If you did love it, or if you love Babylon 5 already, or you're just feeling awesome, reach down there and like that thumbs up button so as I know you're awesome. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss the next episode. I ain't seen nobody do this before, so it may be a watching stuff first over here. I'm going to leave you with a little teaser for that, and until next time, remember, possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, alright? Later.